Call to order the session of the Community Campus Committee. The first item is to allow any public comment. I don't see anybody from the public here in person. Is there anybody online that wishes to speak?
I don't see anybody.
Okay, we do have somebody were to talk, there is a 3-minute maximum, but not hearing anything, we'll go on to the next item, the approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any comments on either the January 22nd or the 23rd meeting minutes that were distributed? All right, hearing none. We're approving both of those meeting minutes. Next agenda item is the staff update on the community center survey.
Okay. So at the last meeting, we provided a brief update that we had developed the community center survey, which was part of the scope of work for the consultant team to put together, working with our Parks and Rec department. And we kind of had some confused faces on the committee. And so we regrouped with our consultant team and then also brought in our city communications manager, and working with those groups as well as our Parks and Rec director, who I think was in here and scooted out. We have decided that we are not wanting to send out the community center survey at this time after further thought. The reason for that is, number one, the city is not ready to build a community center. And so we're concerned that by putting the survey out, it would set expectations in the community that we maybe are not really ready to meet, because we're really viewing the community center portion of this project as kind of a phase 2 initiative that's probably going to be years beyond implementation of phase 1. The second reason that we decided to go against it is that we think that those survey results would probably be good for around 6 months' time. And so we're probably going to have to do a second survey when we're actually ready to plan and construct a facility to get a better understanding of the needs at that time. And also at the same time, we're working on an update to the city's comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which is also known as a CORP plan. And we are doing a community survey as part of that project. And so putting out 2 surveys related to recreation needs also could cause confusion in the public. There are a couple of challenges that I want to raise related to the recreation department and their space needs, which is that they have a very small space within the existing senior center building, which we call the Hubbard Activity Center. And it's 2 small rooms. And if you've been in there for a youth dance class or for an adult yoga class, you know that it's very, very small, but it is the only space that they have and control aside from park shelter buildings currently. And so if, as this process moves forward, this committee makes a recommendation that the senior center ends up being torn down, for example, then that would really negatively impact the Parks and Recreation department, because that is the only space that they have. And so if that building remains, they may be able to utilize it temporarily, but it won't meet the full needs for a full community center. So if that building remains, they could use it on a temporary basis, but they are concerned about ongoing maintenance and operation costs associated with that building. But if it is torn down, then they would either need to lease other space or enter into an agreement or an arrangement with the senior center to on a temporary basis, use space within the senior center when the senior center is otherwise closed. And I know Tammy and Kylie have worked out an arrangement currently that is, I think, from what I understand, is working pretty well for the rec department to be able to use some of the space within the senior center in the evenings or on the weekends when they're otherwise closed. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. I don't think there was anything else on the community center survey, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Yes.
You know, the Middleton school system has a lot of places. Is there any opportunity to use some of those after hours for these?
And they do use those heavily. I have my son in a basketball class right now and he's there 2 nights a week at Cromery. Do you want to give an update on that, Kylie?
For sure. I know that's always the question is the school district facilities. They have awesome facilities throughout the community. We do utilize all of the available school facilities currently, but it is outside of their, they get first dibs. And then we have an agreement to kind of be the next in place to utilize their facilities. Something, for example, is our youth center. Anytime that they have a class or program running, we have to get kicked out of the space and figure it out. And when we have registered participants for our programs, it creates a lot of challenges to create sustainable programs that people trust that we're going to be able to operate. So I guess what I'm saying is that we do utilize the school district facilities as much as possible for their indoor spaces, but we continue to limited opportunities as they are growing their programming, and our community is growing with all the their activities that they have after school. They added, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but they added numerous activities for the Cromery Middle School, which directly impacts all of our adult sport leagues, our youth center, a lot of the programming that we use, the gyms. So we are just hitting that like limited space. And as we continue to grow in the future, we're going to see that more and more reduced for the rec department to be able to utilize.
Is there any possibility to look at some of the churches in the area of space there? Because I know a lot of them have like recreational areas and some of the.
Yeah, and there is definitely like we try to utilize spaces at churches, in the parks, in our shelters, at the HAC, at all the gyms, and we are just hustling around the community to bring activity to the entire community. What makes it hard is just that stabilized space to always have dance classes on Monday through Thursday night, for example, or always have our volleyball leagues on Monday and Wednesdays, and our basketball leagues and that on Saturday mornings. And as we have more people, it just is harder. But yes, we can look at utilizing space. It's just we have to then take a look at our staffing resources and how we have how we would have staff transport, and then also set up and tear down. And we all have limited full-time staff to do that. And we can't always rely on a 16-year-old to be doing that at outside spaces. So it's just how we have things set up makes it challenging when we're running around the community, which we do right now. So.
I just had one question. So as far as those 2 rooms go, are those accounted for as the part of the future growth for the senior center, like moving forward in your projected growth? Like, is that counted towards that?
Just those 2 larger multi-purpose rooms?
Or the small ones?
The Hopper Activity Center.
Or off the lobby, like to the left?
Yeah, there are, in each space needs assessment, there are larger meeting spaces or activity spaces, if you will, that could certainly be used for shared functions. And that, so
Yeah.
to answer your question, yes, it's accounted for.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. So right now, Tammy, do you use those rooms at all? You do. Okay. So it's a shared function currently. It could potentially be a shared function later on. It's counted for today's square footage and in the future. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think, so those 2 rooms, I don't know if that was, I didn't mean
I
to,
was asking about other rooms.
Oh.
I were asking about other rooms.
Oh.
Are you talking about the current? I'm sorry.
the HAC, right?
We are not currently using that, but we have recently discussed it.
Okay.
We're all trying to share everything because
Yeah,
we're
no.
bursting out of the seams. But we really have one very small room that fits about 10 participants for like a yoga class if you had 10 yoga mats. And that isn't meeting our capacity needs with wait list. And we really need 4 large rooms or that to be able to be reserved and not kicked out of. That would be my and that would be my wish and hope, but I know we're gonna need more than that in the future, but we are okay being flexible and figuring this out. Cause there's a lot of needs throughout the community, so.
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to. So we're not moving ahead with the community center, but it sounds like we might need to still provide limited space in the,
If the senior center
in the senior
building
center.
is to be taken down as part of this project,
Right.
then we would need to find some limited temporary space.
Okay, and the suggestion is to put that in the new form of the senior center?
Are all of your classes on hours that the senior center is not? Okay, so I think that we would need probably either leased space.
Or designated at least a room comparable. That would be the minimum,
Okay,
like at least a designated room that we could always use. We have like schools day out programs that we run during the day. And we do use nights and weekends quite heavily, but we do have day programs for like our adult yoga classes or like schools day out, our homeschool programs and things of that nature. So at least having minimum that space, and then we use it heavily for storage because we don't have storage in our office space. So the front room is heavily used for storage as well. So
okay, so it sounds like this maybe needs to get into our projections as like another group that you guys talk to for at least temporary space or to equal what you have now. And then I guess my other question is right now that space is with the senior center.
it's in the same building. It's just like, yeah.
Right. I guess my question is that relationship make the most sense? Or if, because we're also talking about library and the
I would,
city hall, like does that space belong with the senior center? Or is it just happens that they had space and so that's where you went? Or would it make more sense to be with one of these other programming elements?
yeah, I think we're open to having it within City Hall or the senior center. The library, we aren't as that partnership is a little bit harder because of the policies, which we charge fees for our classes, and we're fee-based. That's how we cover our resources. So how we share space is a little bit more challenging within the library footprint. So that's why we naturally have fit very well with senior center, or if it's a part of City Hall. We use this room for dance classes quite heavily. Not that it's like the best setup for us, but then just having storage space is also a necessity.
Kidding me.
So
Okay. Sounds good.
So you're kind of looking at consistency of where you want to be located so people don't have to move around a lot.
a designated room for the rec department is necessary, at least equal or greater than what we have. If that's as a temporary solution, a community center in the future. I think you being part of the senior center know that the growth of our community affects the programming and the number use, so you can kind of.
So you're kind of looking to be, trying to be consistent where you're going to be meeting, so people ain't going from one spot to another all the time.
Yeah, that does make it really challenging on parents and families, so.
I think it is nice to have space in downtown area as well, just for the rec department. So then parents can go to the library while someone's taking class, right?
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, there really doesn't need space downtown.
there,
Like, that'd be great.
yeah, I think there's positives for being in a park in a green space or being downtown. I think there could definitely be a lot of positives for different people's situations. So,
Thanks.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, Tim.
So I had the opportunity to meet with Paul prior to this meeting today. One of the things that we talked about, the key to making that work is going to be the design of the building. So like currently, we have the recreation department using a couple of rooms downstairs, but they can't use the full part of it because it all connects back up to the senior center offices, and we just need to be able to secure that. So if we constructed a new senior center, for example, we talked about having maybe 3 rooms that were designed so that they had their own entrance. And then the senior center space sat behind those rooms where that could be locked off and cordoned off. But say recreation then wound up building a community center, we would have those rooms for our use, or even in the interim, we would still be able to use those rooms probably from 8 to 4, because a lot of their programs are mostly at night. So it really, I think, could be designed to work really well to help the recreation department with their space needs too.
I think that's a really important point that Tammy just made. There are a lot of opportunities, infinite possibilities. I do want to just reiterate or remind everyone that we are in kind of like the space planning phase of this project. Design will come at some point should the city decide to move forward. And a lot of these mechanics will definitely get worked out during the course of design. Our main course of action right now, identifying space needs and putting a cost to those space needs, not necessarily working through the process of design.
Do you think this would necessarily need to increase the square footage of the senior center then? Because right now you got it as 32, is it 32,000 for the senior center?
I will share my opinion. This hasn't been discussed yet internally or with the committee. I think there are opportunities to generate efficiencies within the existing program to identify a space for youth. I think there are some opportunities there, but again, that is, largely a design exercise that will come at some point.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding community center activities? Okay, yeah.
Just one, and I'm sure the answer's obvious because I know that Abby would have thought of it. There was an investment company in a building near the senior center that we owned, and they moved, and I don't know what's there now.
The senior center actually took over that
Oh,
space.
okay.
Because they needed it due to the way that the senior center building is set up, it's very hard for them to have a personal meeting where they don't want other people like hearing information aside from in the case managers' offices. And so they have some groups that meet that require a little bit of a level of confidentiality. And so I know that they've moved over into the former Edward Jones space for that. I've also seen that they've been having board meetings and other meetings in that space.
Okay.
So I think that space is necessary for the senior center and will need, hopefully has already been included as part of the program for
Sure.
the new senior center.
It's also used for some of our programs.
Some of the
People
programs.
Okay,
entertained.
so it's not an option.
So this is a really good conversation. I do note that it is about 12:15 or so. We've got a lot of
Yeah,
content to
sorry
get
about
through and some exciting stuff to get through. So I want to move the agenda if that's
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Yep.
And Paul has got a lot of really exciting stuff to share. What was that?
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Before doing that, we just want to provide you with a little bit of context, a little bit of overview, remind you where we have been, where we are now, and where we're headed over the course of the next little while. So today, we want to provide you with that overview, talk a little bit about the options that we have developed with your input. Talk a little bit about the costing process that will come here in over the course of the next handful of weeks, and then talk about next steps. So that is, our next 45 minutes or so. So let me say a word or two about the work that you have done thus far with our group. We began by identifying some very big, high-level goals. We reviewed some financial information that Bill provided this last summer, maybe early fall. And you all did a facilities tour, a series of facilities tours in the area and all the way out east as well. We have completed a facilities assessment that included a review of the MEP systems in all three of the spaces. And Paul has completed an architectural assessment as well to try to identify the big kind of system needs for these three buildings. We've gotten a lot of staff input thus far from Tammy, from the library, from City Hall. And we've tried to incorporate that information into our space needs assessment. And now we're kind of at the option development process, and Paul is going to share some exciting options here in a few minutes. We have a total of 6 different options that we'll review. So let me just provide a little bit of context and background. We began by reviewing some of these very high level goals. I'm going to move through this very quickly. The goals of this project to try to modernize the city's facilities. We want to make efficient use of space, potentially utilizing underground parking, and potentially trying to identify multi-purpose spaces, right? Spaces that can be kind of co-utilized. We have try to accommodate future growth. We know that Middleton is continuing to grow. We want to accommodate that growth within reason, right? We are striving to try to identify and develop a program that meets the city's needs, both in terms of, kind of visually appealing space, but also space that accommodates everyone, right? Regardless of varying abilities. And then finally, we want to keep in mind, and I think you all want to keep in mind, that environmental sustainability is really, really important. And we want to align our facilities plans with the sustainability goals that the city has, right? Very, very important. So what are we doing? How are we using these goals? Again, we're going to try to align our facilities plans with these goals. It's really, really important that we try to make use of those goals by doing some sort of assessment based on the city's goals that we have developed, or that the city has developed, and then test those against the options that we're developing. So at some point, the city's going to review this information and provide you with kind of a high-level matrix to, again, assess those various options that you'll see here in a moment or so. Let me say about a word or two about that option development process. We have, again, had some extended conversations with staff. You all participated in the two-day charrette. We've collected a lot of information and input from all of you, and we have turned that input into a handful of different options for you to consider today. A little bit more context and background, and this is really, really important. We did some planning work back in 2019, 2020. Several of you were a part of that process. The three options that we developed at the time were all around 150,000 square feet or thereabouts. At the time, Findorf, a construction management company, very, very well respected in town, did some cost estimates based on that program. There was a low range and a high range, and that varied from about $50 million to $75 million or thereabouts. And those were in 2020 dollars. So you can anticipate that the program being developed and the options that Paul is going to present here in a moment or two are going to be of similar size. And, you know, knowing what we know about inflation and construction inflation, they will most likely be more than this amount, right? That makes sense. Let me just give you a really quick overview of these 6 different options. And I want to focus on option number 1 and option number 2. Option number 1, you always have the option of doing nothing at all, right? That's a viable option. I would note here that there's a cost associated with doing nothing. And that is maintaining the facilities that you have on hand right now. Systems age, the infrastructure ages and begins to deteriorate.
Enough.
Those costs increase. So it's important to consider that. Option number 2, in addition to option number 1, are within the existing footprint of the building, the current buildings. They do not meet the current space needs that staff have conveyed to us. Again, Paul will review this. And then finally, this next slide here before I give things over to Paul. These are the parking estimates that we have calculated based on these 6 different estimates. And you see that for the most part, options 4, 5, and 6 increase pretty substantially the amount of parking downtown. I will note that we are potentially building over the top of surface parking and creating below grade parking to increase those parking counts. Okay. And I'll hand things to Paul.
Oh, did you want to go through the space program thing? We'll just jump in.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. So do you have?
Yeah, and these, oh no.
Jake will just hand out a little handout to you. It's a summarization of the options that you'll see. So please take some time to scribble notes on those if you aren't able to ask a question, and we would like to collect those at the end so we can get all of your comments in addition to the ones that you'll share with us in the public forum. So this first sheet is just, as Andy had mentioned, that's just a summarization of the project goals that we received from the city. This is a spreadsheet that you don't have in your packet, but we are tracking the numbers. And I'm sure that Abby, Brian, and Bill are sick of us always talking about square footage. But we are tracking this, and this is what Findorf is using as a tool to price your options. And to answer your question about, do we have spaces accounted for in the space plan? This is very high level. We're at about 30,000 square feet for a master plan, and we do our best to accommodate or account for all those spaces. And then the next phase, when you hire a team to delve into the design, then there would be a more in-depth analysis really with those square footages. So this slide, now you remember back in October, SEH provided 3 different levels of mechanical renovations to your current buildings, the level 1, 2, and 3. We have a price for that. Now this diagram illustrates the architectural component of that. Because if you're going to upgrade all those mechanical systems, we want to definitely, provide new finishes, interior knock down walls, create more flexible spaces that can be used, and we will have a price for that. And as Andy mentioned, it's important to note that this does not accommodate the future needs that we've identified as a space needs, right? We're just renovating what's in place. And of course, when we go through the renovation process, we would make all the buildings accessible. For example, City Hall, the restrooms aren't accessible, and there's other issues. So that would be the goal of the renovations. So we remember that the option. Oh, right. Yeah. Let me go back. We were going to give you, for each of these options, about 5 minutes to comment. So we'll kind of watch it, and then we're going to move on to the next. As opposed to going through everything, then it's almost overwhelming.
So let me ask you this. What are your general thoughts about renovating the existing buildings in space, in place, not expanding the buildings, no additions? We're just renovating the existing spaces that we currently have.
Our biggest issue is space needs. I mean, you're going back and fixing up these buildings is counterproductive. It's gonna cost money and it's gonna be no benefit for the people of the city. The senior center right now, I'm not getting into numbers, but I think we're increasing by at least 250 people a year coming in. It's new senior center users. So I don't know how you can project this. I mean, it's difficult to project after COVID, but and we're looking at an exponential curve going upward for usage in our facilities. That's only for the senior center.
Okay, good comment. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. Others?
I think in addition to space needs, that kind of goes hand in hand with that is limited land that's owned by city and available. Currently, they're all single stories. Some have basements, some basements aren't occupiable. And so it's just a poor land use, what we currently have, and it's just a Band-Aid to move it forward. But at the end of the day, it all does come down to space needs, and that's what I think we're lacking.
Okay, others, please chime in, give us your thoughts about renovating in place.
I feel like it's just kicking the can down the road.
I think it'd be wasting money in that sense too, that you wouldn't be accomplishing much.
Okay, all good comments. Any other thoughts before we move on to option number 3?
And we encourage you to write down on those packets too, because we'll collect those at the end of the session today. And so if there is something that you want to put down and we don't get to it, at least we have it in writing. We can address it after this meeting.
The next sheet that you see on the screen, this is a summarization of options 3 through 6. So we've already sort of discussed option 1 and 2 really don't meet your future needs. But this is a nice summary. As you think about this at the end, you can look at everything on one sheet. And the thing to note is that the option number 3 is additions and renovations to each of the buildings. Option 4 and 5 is a combination between additions and renovations plus that new construction. And then the final option, number 6, is all new construction. And it's important to note that we developed these options from our charrette exercise. And then we applied some of the things we heard from the city about really having one move per department, thinking about phasing. And we do have phasing diagrams for all of these. If you really want to get into the weeds, I can show you some of that. But really taking that into account, and that really distilled it down to these 4 viable options, we felt. So we can zoom into, let's look at option number 3. This is the option where we are renovating the City Hall and Senior Center, and then providing additions to accommodate their future space needs. You'll note the library on the south side of Hubbard Avenue has an addition as well. And that gets them close to their space needs, indicated in that little box in the lower right. Also, under that library addition, there is below grade parking. So we are counting that parking count. And I believe that's around 39 parking spaces. We are maintaining that parking space between the existing senior center and the city hall. It would have to be reconfigured a little bit to accommodate a drop off at the front entry to the senior center in this location. So we'll pause for a minute and let you provide some feedback.
I guess my initial thoughts on this one is it's probably the least expensive way to get to the space needs we need. I think it's going to lack it severely in any parking because we're losing so much in the parking lot between here and the senior center, and you're going to lose some as well next to the library. I think both this building and the senior center, no matter what you do to the HVAC units, especially the senior center, just the flow and the movement and the load bearing walls and just the existing space doesn't suit well for heavy renovation to get it to where the senior center would like it to be. And I think we're still maintaining those one-story buildings for most of this, which is once again not the greatest use of land now and doesn't provide any future expandability in the future.
Other thoughts about option 3?
I would echo Justin's thoughts, and I would just say that just going wider just doesn't feel like the answer when we're trying to decrease our footprint anyway.
I think Justin touched on another point. The question will always come up, well, isn't it cheaper to just renovate an existing building? Well, that may be true to some extent, but in this instance, we need to really apply everything we're learning about the mechanical systems and providing you with systems that will put you on the path, excuse me, to achieve net zero by 2040. So there's a cost associated with that. Then if we were going to renovate and add on to these buildings, this building, for example, City Hall would be an entire interior gut. We take out the elevator, the stairs, everything, bathrooms, because none of that's accessible. And then we would also probably put a new exterior on the building because, as you well know, that there are insects living in parts of the building. So there's a cost associated with that. We bundle that all together and we say, what's the number for adding on and renovating this building? And how does that compare to the cost of new construction? Is it 70%, 80%? But the other thing that you need to apply to that as well, like Justin alluded, for example, the senior center, right? There's so many different levels. There's challenges that the existing building and structure provide that makes it difficult to renovate. So that's always part of the conversation as well, because that plays into the future flexibility and building facilities that will last 50 to 100 years.
Goal number 2. That's important to keep the goals in mind while you're looking
Yeah,
at these
absolutely.
options too. There's 5 of them and how they interact.
Other thoughts?
I just have a general thought. I was adding up the number of new homes that are being built, single-family homes in the northern part of the city in the 3 developments. And that's going to be 600 single-family homes. Some of them will be more affordable than others, but still, that's going to put a lot of pressure on city resources and the schools. And I know the school district's planning for some of that. But I think whatever we do, we know the bones in these buildings are not great, and parking's already an issue. We need to create options for parking, just not only in the immediate future, but in the next 10, 15 years as well. So we have to go up, and going out is just not a good option at all. It doesn't meet any of those needs.
And Kevin, you're talking about the Bellefontaine area.
Right, the Bell Farm, Red Tail
Right.
Ridge, which is already building out at rapid rate, and the Ziegler Farm is the most recent one. They're all on the north side of the city there.
Yeah.
And that's not counting also their apartment units too. That's just single family homes, 600.
Well, the senior center also serves the town of Middleton. You know, some of their areas. It's not just, the senior center just doesn't serve the city of Middleton. We also serve the town of Middleton as well.
Sure.
And that place is growing like crazy out there, so.
So we need to plan for that. Option 3 is not great.
I think we have previously mentioned phasing. Paul and Justin, I think, just talked about phasing. There is a potential impact here on the senior center if we are renovating the senior center in place, right? So there is a potential move needed in order to heavily renovate the senior center in place. Paul's a master at that, Findorf's a master of that. Maybe they can figure it out, but there could potentially be an impact there.
Correct. Can we move on?
Yes. I think so.
Okay, the fourth option. Now, this is the option where, and again, I have phasing diagrams, and this would take about 5 phases of construction to pull this off. But the thought is here, you would build a new commingled library and city hall north of Hubbard Avenue. And you see that the senior center and the city hall were removed, and the existing library would be remodeled to become the senior center. And underneath that building, there are 86 or 84 parking spaces underneath that new building of the library and the city hall. It really takes that density from south of Hubbard Avenue along the railroad tracks and pushes it more to the center of that little downtown area.
Thoughts about option number 4?
I like that it provides a storefront atmosphere on both Hubbard and Elmwood. However, this building's getting quite deep, so in order to get daylight into the interior of it, I think may either be hard or eat up some of that square footage that you're counting on here. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think if the senior center would move to the library, we'd have to have additions built to that to accommodate the size. And just like I say, we're running into this square footage issue, sizes of the building, so there'd have to be some addition to that. Significant remodeling.
Yeah. And you indicated that, I mean, it would have to be an out addition because you can't go up because
Correct.
the existing building will not accommodate that.
Correct. You would.
So then we would be losing parking spaces.
Yes, you would.
So talk a little bit more about that, Ken in particular and Jan, the space, the square footage space for the existing library, potential future senior center, meets roughly that space need that has been identified at around, 34,000 square feet or thereabouts. The basement would be utilized in that square footage number. What are the big concern or concerns about that?
Well, the nice thing about the library, it's got 2 elevators. But, we have to still consider the other things of a space to get our Meals on Wheels and the serving of our meals. It's still available under the current situation where the grants are getting cut on some of that, but that's another issue is essentially we're gonna have to put a kitchen in there, a kitchen that's gonna meet all code. And reasonable access for the people to pick up those meals and get them out there.
Okay, I appreciate
Residents who
that.
can't
Yeah.
get them.
Others' thoughts on option number 4?
I guess I'm still concerned about the future. And that is the fact that our future is gonna have more seniors than, I mean, it's gonna be obvious. And so we're gonna be having to add on, not go up. So I have a problem with that, not being able to go up and that we have to add on, because it's, I mean, it's gonna happen. And we're supposed to be thinking about the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and you're absolutely right, Jan. The one thing that I would say is that things change, right? We have no idea what Middleton is gonna look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I'm not a demographer. We don't have one in the room, I don't think. It's really difficult to plan 20 years out, 30 years out, because we just don't know. But I definitely appreciate the comments, and some sort of growth absolutely should be factored in here and considered. How much growth? We need to think a little bit more about that.
But you still are telling me you can't go up with
No.
this
You're correct.
existing
You're
building.
Right, but any addition can go up, right? Anything you put on the western side of the current library could be a multi-story building.
Yes, it
You
could.
could move the offices upstairs, or the people who are more mobile functions for that purpose. And then you could create even parking underneath that, one level parking perhaps, not down on the ground, but underneath that addition. So it seems to me it gives you some
And
options.
take out parking.
That was very similar to the option 3. We put that library addition on the building, and I have floor plans if you want to see them, but there is parking below them.
And I just have a basic question too, and I know we're running out of time, but in moving from the current senior center space into a library that's been basically gutted and redone, wouldn't we gain some efficiencies in how the space is used in a new space? Because the existing senior center is so chopped up, and seems to me, do we need the exact same number of square footage, or can a elegant design accommodate that in some way?
I think we're losing a lot in the library. I think we lose a lot of space because of the vaulted ceilings. I mean, we have the ground floor, but those ceilings, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I think they're vaulted in there, which you can't do anything with. And yet you're gonna have to do something in there to keep the noise down from one individual room to another. So you might have to take those all the way up to the ceiling or put a full ceiling in there.
I'm sure.
It's a very good point, Kevin. And ultimately, we're gonna have to think hard about efficiencies. I think the committee is gonna need to consider that once cost estimates come in. And we'll certainly have to have a conversation with all of you and city staff and department heads as well. I think efficiency is definitely gonna have to be something considered.
On the current construction, the way the library is right now, can you put in solar panels on top, or won't the roof support that?
There is, and that's a good question. We do have a consultant providing photovoltaic layouts on all the buildings and all of these options. And they'll provide pricing and kilowatts, but yes, on that south side, right, we do have PV panels.
Okay, let's move on to the next option because we have.
Okay. So option 5, again, what we're doing is we're building a new city hall and senior center on the current library site. And we have all the facing figured out for that. What's interesting here is the current city hall is added onto and renovated to become the new senior center. The other thing it provides an opportunity is to maintain that surface parking between city hall and senior center. And then the city has an opportunity to either repurpose the current senior center or sell it to a developer. Yeah, that option becomes part of the mix.
I like this one because it has the continuous open space if you assume that that's the senior center is going away. But I think this one still puts us back in having a large one-story building. And out of all the buildings, I think this is the last one we want to save or repurpose, in my opinion. Well, I guess it's tough, but I think the library and the previous one makes more sense to repurpose than these other two. Just understanding how large open space it has on 2 floors in the library compared to the chopped up nature of the senior center and the inhabitable lower basement of this building.
Well, that's a good point, but we can certainly access that part, but we would have to put in a new elevator and a stair for egress.
Right.
Oh, there's option 5.
It doesn't seem to provide a lot of easy outdoor access or Meals on Wheels or whatever other activities like 4 does, but the parking's kind of far away from the furthest east portion of the new space there.
How many faces of building does this option offer, or does it require?
If he's gonna talk, I'll give you. an answer
Sorry.
here.
What do you want me to talk?
If you have something to say, this would be like four phases.
4 phases.
Because you
of
need to build an
construction.
addition to the library. Right? That's that part that's closest to Hubbard Avenue Diner, and then occupy that to become the library. Then you would need to demolish the current library and then build that part of the building that has those 2 blue areas in it.
Mhm.
Then you would move the city hall into that. And then you would completely remodel the current city hall. So you could get some senior center functions into it.
Sure.
Then come back and build the addition to this building. And then move the rest of the senior center program into it.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Other thoughts? We do have an unoccupied building here, which could serve as, expanded programming at the Hubbard Avenue Activity Center.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Correct.
Hubbard Activity Center.
I just, don't want our IT director to get mad at me if I don't mention this, but, I think we brought this up with the group before and we've also talked with the consulting team about it. But the city's fiber network is currently housed in the basement of the library building. And so under this, option, as well as option 6, that would need to get relocated. And I just want to make sure that all of the costs associated with that will end up being worked out with Fendorf so that, I know he was
Yep.
interested in an option that would repurpose the existing library because he thought, well, then we wouldn't have to move the network, but something to consider.
That's a very good point, Abby. I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
And we have done that in the past to what she's mentioning. What you need to do is build a new IT hub very close to the existing one. And then like on a weekend, you get all the infrastructure coming into that. And then on a weekend, then you have to come in and start switching all that over. So it can be done, but as Abby mentioned, there's a cost to that.
Move on to.
Okay. So option 6 is all new construction. So similar to the previous option, the library and the city hall is located on the current library site. Then what would occur here, once you move out the city hall into the new commingled new facility, you demolish the city hall and then build a new multi-story senior center. Now, this option does have parking below the senior center. That does not necessarily mean that the senior center patrons have to park down there, right? There's still that center surface parking lot between the old senior center and the new one that could be used for parking. And then there is access for Meals on Wheels and a little loading dock off to the east side of that senior center building.
I like this one because I feel like it gives us the most parking that we're gonna have. It gives us a large future expandable area off of the senior center. The one thing I think might make sense in at least one of these two options for the south parcel along the railroad is to actually go up to 5 stories to reduce the footprint, but allow the same square footage. I think there's potentially some opportunity there. It's not directly adjacent to any residential housing, and it gives us more surface area that could either be used as parking or park space or future development.
Others' thoughts? Option 6, all new construction.
Going back to the other options, at one time was mentioned that it'd be nice for the city vehicles to be parked underground out of the weather, less of their electric. I mean, that, I know it might be one to consider in options 4 through 6 for the underground parking for the city vehicles. That'd be a designated space. It wouldn't be available for other parking. Sure.
I thought that I was gonna like option 4 the most, because when we had the little models, everyone seemed excited about keeping the library. But I think this is my favorite option now, because it really does assess and address everyone's needs. And then perhaps if we sold the old senior center, that might mitigate some of the extra costs that all new buildings are gonna require. Yeah, that's just my thought. And so I'm gonna ask, how many phases of construction will this one cost?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Wow.
3 phases probably, because what you would do is you'd build a new addition to the current library, move the library in, then demolish the old library, build that portion with the city hall in it, and then demolish city center, the city hall, sorry, and then build the new senior center. So 3 phases.
Okay, that surprised me. I thought it was gonna be more than all of the other ones, so thank you.
But presumably the most expensive, but
Yeah.
upfront anyway.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for Findorf's estimates. On the other hand, it probably gets the city closest to its sustainability goals, which, could have some long-term offsetting costs.
If we're gonna have the job of trying to sell this to the taxpayers, it's going to be a super big number, no matter which option we choose. And I feel like educating them on all of these needs and future goals that we have, I feel like this is gonna be the one that will, we're gonna sell it. Let's sell the one that we really need.
You're thinking option 4.
I'm thinking option 6.
Option 6,
Yeah.
okay. Would you think the city would do that in phases, or would it have to be all done at once?
Well, I think that depends on what numbers we get back. And we're gonna have residents commenting and saying, yeah, we're okay with this, or no, we're not okay with this. And then maybe we can do it in phases if we have to.
And then there was mention on our first meeting, the possibility of TIF money, but that couldn't be used for the city hall. If the city hall was adjacent to the library, would that negate the TIF money?
TIF cannot be used to fund municipal buildings. I know at the beginning of the project, what we had talked about is that there might be a possibility to use some TID funding for the underground parking if it also was open and available to the public, because it would be serving the downtown businesses. But that was years ago, and we are very close to closing that TIF district now. So I don't think that we'll be using direct TIF financing to support this project. We will be inviting Bill Burns, our finance director, to the next meeting, and he's going to share some financing options, because by the next meeting, we'll actually have the cost estimates back from Findorf, and there may be a way to leverage the closure of the TIF district, because when the TIF district closes, the city does get some capital cash funding with the closure of the district, but we also get an operating levy adjustment. So I know that there may be an interest in trying to structure the timeline for this so that it aligns with when we get that tax levy adjustment to reduce the impact to the residents.
Bill has
Oh, is he here? Oh, Bill is zooming in, so he can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm doing a little multitasking as we're also getting ready for our audit currently, but yeah, I was just going to kind of indicate what Abby had started to say, that we have started looking at both the structure of the city's existing debt service, as we have some debt dropping off from other facility projects, as well as the impact of the TID closure and the levy limit and tax base adjustment for that TIF. So I agree with Abby that we're not anticipating being able to use TIF funds to directly pay for expenses during the life of the TID, but that we may be able to use both those reductions in debt service and the impact of the TID closure to help offset some of the impact of a facility project, and kind of look at in total for the city budget and tax rate, how we could implement something and try to minimize the impact. And as we get more cost estimates from Pindorf, we'll work on refining those projections.
I want to respect all of your time. We are at time. Would you be willing to hang for about 10 minutes or so? Just to kind of close up shop, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody else is.
Okay, we did want to say a word or two about next steps. On the screen, you see a very, very detailed space program that Paul developed for the senior center in collaboration with Tammy and others. Yes, so this is an example of the work that we've done also with the library and City Hall. So there's a lot of information that has been developed in order to get to, say, that 33,000 square feet at the senior center. A lot of information behind it. What is being costed by Pindorf is going to be, generally speaking, that overall number. This is, again, a space programming exercise, not necessarily a design exercise. One of the things that we will need to be doing most likely is trying to identify some efficiencies. Do we need, X number of meeting rooms, or can we share meeting rooms among the library and City Hall, for example? Can we share space in the evening time with the library and the senior center? All of those things need to be discussed with all of you, with the program directors, and with Abby, Bill, and Brian as well. So a lot of conversation needs to occur yet before we develop and refine those cost estimates. Those cost estimates should be coming for your next meeting. Again, they're going to be preliminary, they're going to be super high level, and you're going to see probably a pretty wide range because we are not in design, okay? These aren't bids, they are just very high level cost estimates.
Will they include avoided energy costs at all? Or is that
Yes,
down the road? Or?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Paul has begun some conversations with Focus on Energy. So we've got a great team at EUA, at SEH, and also at Findorf that does a lot of energy modeling.
Great.
So do you want to wrap up shop? Yeah, I kind of, yeah, right.
Coffee.
So, yeah, exactly. So next meeting, March 27th, I believe.
March 20th, we moved it up.
20th,
Oh.
yes, due to spring break. Okay, so let's change that. March 20th, I apologize. Again, reviewing kind of the next iteration of the options, and most importantly, reviewing cost estimates and potential financial projections, as Bill was alluding to. Tax impact is very important. We need to consider that. I want to return just really quickly to one thing that Katie said just a moment or two ago. Communication and engagement with the community is going to be most likely really, really important. This is likely to be a significant number once we see cost estimates from Findorf. There aren't I live in Middleton. Many of us here on the consultant team live in Middleton. There aren't a whole lot of people talking about this right now, at least from my experience. Communicating to the broader Middleton community is going to be really, really important, and engaging them to get their input is going to be very, very important. The work that you have done, just invaluable, right? But we're going to need to expand the circle at some point and start to listen and gather feedback from your friends, your families, your neighbors, etc. Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, the senior center also deals with the town of Middleton. Is there any possibility of getting funding from the town of Middleton for the senior center?
That is
No.
beyond my experience.
Do they currently
not
provide
my
any
depth.
funding?
Pardon?
Do they currently provide any funding?
When Ken says that we serve the town of Middleton, we're serving the town of Middleton for the nutrition program. And so Dane County does factor that cost into the stipend that they give us for the nutrition program. That is not to say that we don't have people from the town that come to the center. I'm sure that we do. I think it would be very difficult to get additional funding from them for those few residents that come, so.
It's got a hole in it.
We try.
That's right.
That's an interesting point, and a potential interesting conversation that we could have at with other governmental entities. That's something that we can explore, but that we haven't really discussed at all, and I don't want to get over my skis.
The last agenda item we had was potential action regarding the options. Is that something we need or you need from us at this point?
So I will say this, the fewer options Findorf has to cost, and the fewer options we have to refine, the better we will do, I think, right? There's some efficiency there. There's less work on a broad range of options, and we can dial in a little bit deeper on some options that you're really seriously considering.
So with that being said, my personal opinion is the option one and two, where there's just remodeling the existing. I feel like we probably don't need them to go any further in that.
Those don't meet the current space needs.
As well as option three, where it's just in addition to the existing buildings, if everybody feels comfortable with that at this point.
Do nothing. but-
Right.
So 1, 2, and 3, you're saying?
Yeah, so one was do nothing, two was remodel the existing buildings as is, no additional space. Three was leaving the existing buildings, remodeling them, and then moving out. And then I guess the other thought in my head is 4 and 5 are essentially the same, where it's a hybrid solution where we're adding a new building and repurposing one of our existing buildings. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If we can narrow that down to just one hybrid option, pick the one that we feel is best between option 4 and 5 and move forward with one of them. I don't know if you all have up on your screen. So 4 is adding the large building on the north side or down in the plan and repurposing the library, and option 5 is repurposing senior center and having the new large building on the south side near the railroad tracks. Any thoughts on those two options? I
I
guess.
guess it comes down to figuring what the cost is between 4, 5, and 6. If they're close, then it's, kind of choose what you want. But if there's a big extreme between 4, 5, and 6, then we have to look at an option that may be reasonable for the residents of the city of Middleton are going to buy into it.
Well, I think we're trying to narrow down what we're even gonna ask costs for. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so 6 is probably gonna be the most expensive, right? It's two completely new buildings, more parking underneath. At least that's what I'm expecting. I think that's what you're
You're
expecting
correct.
as well. And I'm thinking 4 and 5 will be similar probably in cost, maybe not. Maybe we ask them to figure those out first, like step 1, and then maybe at that point, once we get the numbers, we can make the decision.
Right, number 4 would have some additional demolition of the current senior center. So
That is true. Yeah,
there's a little
that's
bit.
very true. Yeah.
So I'll say this, I would be a little hesitant, for the group to narrow down, maybe all the way down to just 2. This is the first time you've received this information. You'll probably want to mull it over a little bit. I think to be fair to all of you, give it a little bit more thought, and spend a little bit of time just kind of thinking about it.
Sorry, I think we need the cost for all of them still, but as far as like
4, 5, and 6.
moving forward,
Right.
like down the road with any potential, I don't know how far your guys are going with this at this phase, but like, I think once we get the cost for those, that's probably all we need for 1, 2, and 3. Like, there's probably not a lot of future information. We need to
Yeah,
make the
number
decision.
1, that was to do nothing. There won't be a price for that, but there will
Right.
be a number for 2 through 6.
Okay.
But 2 doesn't accomplish anything for us, not in space.
Right.
So, but it sort of puts.
Why waste your time on it
Yeah.
then?
Well, I guess the only thing I would comment there is it puts a pin in the work that SEH did in October, where they came up with the different level renovations of mechanical systems here. At least you'd have the companion architectural number to go with that.
Okay.
And it would give us a benchmark
I think
to
so.
see.
Comparing all the options against
Right.
the same criterion.
Right.
I think also when we are trying to communicate this with the residents of Middleton, we can share with them the cost of this option. And just like that exercise we had with the models, it really made it clear to us that wasn't the way to go.
Mhm.
And so having that detail to help us communicate that will help, I think.
Okay.
Like for 1 and 2, right? Like, this is what it's gonna cost us no matter
No
what,
matter
right?
what,
And it's not gonna
right.
gain us
So having that
anything.
cost.
So
Right.
just having
Yeah.
that number would be beneficial. I
Yeah,
guess.
right.
I can come around and pick up the packets if
Okay, with that, sorry, anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns? All right, with that, I will close today's meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.